In the interest of time, I'm going to get straight to the point. Over the last few weeks, we've seen a blatant attempt by the state, ZANU-PF, and its proxies to keep us distracted by sideshows. However, on behalf of the 2.6 million Zimbabweans who put their faith in the MDC Alliance, we're putting the state and all its operators on notice. We will not be distracted from the real issues bedeviling the nation. The real issue is that corruption is killing us. Let's start with the numbers. In 2017, 2.7 billion disappeared under command agriculture. Of that 2.7 billion, 1.5 billion was withdrawn on a single day, the 27th of December 2017. In 2018, $3.5 billion was unaccounted for, again under command agriculture. We await the next Auditor General's report, but anticipate that this pattern of state looting is going to continue. Now, 7.7 million Zimbabweans face food insecurity of a nation of approximately 15.6 million people. This means that an estimated 5.5 million people in rural Zimbabwe and a further 2.2 million people in urban Zimbabwe are facing food insecurity over the next year. When the MDC trio demonstrated against this hunger, they were abducted, they were tortured, and they were sexually assaulted. They were prosecuted, and they were re-victimized and harassed for speaking out on behalf of 7.7 million Zimbabweans. Corruption is killing us. Corruption is literally starving us. 63% of Zimbabweans are living below the poverty line. Despite the over 6 billion that has been poured into command agriculture, Zimbabwe faces what the UN has described as its worst hunger crisis in a decade. The UN went a step further to classify this crisis as man-made. And according to the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to food, women and children are bearing the brunt of the crisis, with 90% of children aged 6 months to 2 years not consuming enough food. 29.9% of urban households are cereal insecure. Corruption is killing us. Now, Mr. Mnangagwa signed the Zimbabwe Domestic and Humanitarian Appeal for Assistance in April 2020, appealing for a total of 2.2 billion worth of humanitarian aid over the next 12 months. Of that money, only 955.67 million is required for the food insecurity response. This is far less than the 3.5 billion looted under command agriculture in just 2018. In fact, the entire amount requested in aid for 2020 is less than what has been spent propping up those who benefit from looting under the command agriculture scheme. This has not only left us unproductive, but extremely vulnerable. Now, Mr. Mnangagwa's appeal for 2.2 billion that I've referred to just now, 37 million was requested for health. And yet, just in the last fortnight, we've seen the attempted looting of contracts up to the value of $60 million due to the dubious procurement processes and the insatiable appetite of those right at the very top of this regime. We have Priska Mfumira, who is alleged to have looted funds from NASA in excess of $95 million. The amounts looted through these corrupt acts would have been enough to fund health assistance over 2 times over, Yet where is Ms. Mupfumira today? She's walking free. No accountability and no political will to bring her or her accomplices to book. Pensioners are not receiving pensions. Their funds have been completely eroded by inflation, which sits at over 765%. As I stated, in the past few weeks, COVIDgate has implicated very senior government officials, including, as I said, those at the very, very top. Yet all we see are theatrics, weak investigations, and the arrest of the smallest, weakest, least powerful fish. Why is Obadiah Moyo walking free? Why is George Guvamatanga walking free? Why is Mthuli Ncube walking free? Why is Collins Mnangagwa walking free? Corruption is killing us. In 2019, we saw allegations of 17,000 tons of maize being imported from Tanzania at $600 a ton, yet world prices were only at $240 a ton. There was no investigation into this allegation, and the public is still left wondering who organized this contract and who exactly is benefiting from it. According to the Anti-Corruption Commission, ZAC itself, quoting Transparency International Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe loses at the very least $1.8 billion a year to corruption. And this figure is only conservative. Corruption is killing us. Quite simply, the state has employed all manner of distractions, disguised as foiled coup plots, army-backed takeovers of private property, RTGS payments dressed as US dollar allowances, and many other theatrics, parliamentary recalls, fake opposition, internal disturbances. However, we say very unequivocally, we will not be distracted because corruption is killing us. So as a way forward, the MDC Alliance says this: we want and we demand decisive, tangible action. We demand a public, televised inquiry into the COVIDgate scandal. We are sick and tired of corruption being swept under the carpet and the perpetrators of corruption being exonerated behind closed doors to the detriment of the citizen and the public. It is the citizens at the end of the day who pay the price and bear the brunt of the bad governance by ZANU-PF. And so we demand accountability and transparency, because corruption is killing us. If ZAC cannot act independently and transparently, it should be disbanded. We are tired of the catch and release strategy being employed when dealing with the most damning corruption scandals that cost the fiscus the most. The true independence of ZAC must be part of a wider raft of political reforms. As every Zimbabwean knows, corruption is everywhere, but ZAC is mute. The inescapable conclusion that the public has to reach is that this important institution in the fight against corruption has become captured. We want action because corruption is killing us. Arrest the big fish and invest the cases thoroughly. Where is President Mnangagwa? Where is the NASA investigation? What is being done to investigate corruption at Zenara? What is being done to investigate corruption at ZimSec? And all the parastatals that were named in the Auditor General's report. Year in and year out, the Auditor General does all the work, but her reports gather dust and are not followed up by any meaningful investigation, by any meaningful prosecution or conviction. Corruption is killing us. And as you know, in terms of Section 255 of the Constitution, ZAC has a duty not only to investigate corruption, but to expose it as well. But what we've seen as citizens and as the opposition is that ZAC is the place where corruption cases go to die. ZAC is the place where corruption cases go to be swept under the carpet. We have not yet had a single expose of corruption from ZAC, not one. Yet we know from the Auditor General, from our investigative journalists, from reports of the IMF, from the UN Special Rapporteur on Hunger, and from our own daily lived realities that corruption is killing us. Billions are lost each year, and yet there's not been a single call from ZAC for the looters to pay back the money. As the MDC Alliance, we make that call now. We make that demand now. The looters must pay back the money because corruption is killing us. We also demand the strengthening of the National Prosecution Authority. It should not, in terms of the law, be an extension of the president, and I say that term advisedly, or the executive's office. In terms of Section 260 of the Constitution, the Prosecutor General must exercise his or her functions impartially and without fear, favor, prejudice, or bias. The Prosecutor General is accountable to the public. And in terms of Section 260, the principles by which he or she decides whether and how to institute and conduct criminal proceedings must be publicly explained. And so we demand an explanation as to why top government officials have not been arrested. Is this because the Prosecutor General and some of his officials are housed at Mr. Mnangagwa's office? What principles are protecting those at the top? Why are they being allowed to steal with impunity? Yet we see MDC Alliance members who protest simply about hunger, the hunger that's being experienced and felt by 7.7 million Zimbabweans, are arrested, they're abducted, they're tortured, they're sexually assaulted. The citizens simply have to know. In fact, we demand to know. The opposition demands to know what principles are guiding the functions of the NPA as it carries out what are meant to be its constitutional functions, or fails to do so. Ladies and gentlemen, corruption is killing us. As the MDC Alliance, in Parliament, we are going to push for the key amendments to the Public Finance Management Act so that there are consequences for those who do not comply with the requirement to timeously report and account to Parliament on government spending. There has to be a personal cost and personal liability to those leakages caused by corruption and maladministration. We're going to oppose tooth and nail any constitutional amendment, but in particular constitutional amendments that remove parliamentary scrutiny over public spending. We're going to continue the work that's being done by the Public Accounts Committee to bring to book perpetrators of corruption. And we demand that every public officer must declare their assets, as was promised in January 2018. And this disclosure must be made available to public scrutiny, and where necessary, lifestyle audits must be conducted by Zimra. Ladies and gentlemen, at the beginning of 2020, our president, Nelson Chamisa, outlined the MDC Alliance's 5 big fights. One of those key fights was the fight against corruption. We take the fight against corruption extremely seriously. We will not be deterred from fighting it on all fronts, including in Parliament, through peaceful protest, and on social media. We refuse to accept any distraction that is not in the public interest, because right now, corruption is killing us. The architects and perpetrators of this corruption must be brought to book. The MDC Alliance has set out a comprehensive program for the resolution of the national crisis from which the corruption crisis stemmed, in its Road to Economic Recovery, Legitimacy, Openness and Democracy Reload document. This is the comprehensive agenda that we've set out to end Zimbabwe's current economic crisis. But in closing, I'll say this, that economies are not resuscitated by fasting and prayer. They're resuscitated by good governance, by transparency, and by accountability. The only demon binding our economy is that of corruption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Mahere.